back, viewers at home. Tonight, we're delighted to welcome Nolene Zulu, an early childhood development specialist and advocate for quality education. Now, Nolene has a passion for igniting the spark of curiosity and love for learning in young minds and works tirelessly to promote holistic educational experiences. Our today discussion will cover the role of parents, caregivers, and teachers in shaping a child's educational journey. If this is it's a conversation for you, I ask you to please tune in. Nolene, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get to the beautiful work that you're doing, and I believe that it's something that all of us need to sort of equip ourselves and through consuming content like yours, I'd like for you to just give us an insight on who is Nolene and what led you to doing what you're currently doing as a specialist.
Okay, so while I am over and above everything, a mother to so many children, I've been in the educational fraternity for about 2 decades now, and I have worked with so many children. I started off by getting training as a Montessori directress and working in a little school with children, and my passion for children just grew from there. I was very interested in the pedagogy and learning about how a child's mind develops and watching them grow from learning through play and watching that child just being molded. So I was, like I said, curious. I did a lot of study in how a child develops and how a child's brain works, the scientific approach to learning. And then obviously in furthering my studies, I started seeing a lot of barriers to learning and hindrances to learning in children. And that led to more inquiry on how does this mind work? How is this mind formed? And how do we make sure that a child develops optimally? I've stopped for now with learning. I've done numerous courses and trainings, but I stopped at my master's level doing leadership in education because I really want us to make an impact in the educating of a child.
Now, you spoke of many hindrances, and I think this is something that any parent would like to sort of, equip themselves so they can best, mitigate such a situation. What would you say were some of the most common hindrances in that sense?
Okay, so a lot of children currently are being born with neurodivergent disorders, and a lot of young moms, the Generation Z and the millennials, do not know about these challenges. And what comes out first is behavioral issues with your child. And because we are mostly African, we will always believe a child that misbehaves needs a smack, and yet there's more in-depth causes to these challenges. So you are seeing children with autism, with ADHD, with sensory processing disorders, with eyesight disorders, and they're like popping up everywhere. And these are the things that if you are privileged or grow up in a privileged community and you have access to information, you will know. But if you come back, you're coming from a socially or economically disadvantaged background, you won't know. So those are a lot of hindrances that you're seeing in the schools. You're seeing children who are getting to grade 10 and grade 5 and can't read. They're 10 years old. And we just think, this child is dull, they should go into an Elson class or whatnot. But there's a lot of barriers. There's social disadvantages. Children don't have access to quality education, and it becomes a barrier to learning. There's challenges that children meet at home, if it's an unstable home. So there's a lot of things that obviously we can't cover in one sitting, but there are a lot of hindrances to children's learning.
Now, Nolene, a lot of times when you think of TikToks, I'm thinking vlogs, I'm thinking beauty, I'm thinking fashion. But you are special in that way where you're like, you know what, I am going to leverage the social media in a way that really drives impact. And considering that a lot of young ones nowadays are on social media, and I think that's the best way to actually even target them in that sense. What brought you to that mindset to say, TikTok, I'm here?
Okay, so like you're saying, I am a content consumer. And because of that, there's a group of people that I'm always trying to get through to, but you can't really find people on the streets. You can't carry a banner and say, hi guys, I know this, can I help you? And there's a lot of young people on TikTok. And because of that, I chose to use that platform to give out information that people wouldn't just bump into anyway. And because learning is ubiquitous, it should happen everywhere. I feel like TikTok should be also that channel because we are in that digitalization era and we do have all these gadgets and tools, and why not use that to educate somebody? If it takes a minute, somebody who needs it might bump into it and say, hey, this is my child and she said this, maybe I should actually find out more information. So I'm really trying to catch an audience of people who need this information, who are not aware of it, who are young enough to know what they need to know, or old enough to figure out what's going on with their children, but can still fix it and can have that ripple or domino effect on the community around them. So TikTok is amazing because I have met a number of people on that platform and I've seen the need. It started off as, let me just put one thing out there, and the response I got kept me going because there's so much information that I'm sitting on, and we have these channels and they're free and we can use them.
Now, Nolene, one thing I want to understand as well is, when you're curating content, it's quite, I don't know, just personally speaking, it's quite challenging to make sure it's accurate and engaging, especially considering your diverse pool of audience where you're looking at neurodivergent kids and kids who are just, different in that sense. How do you then go about making sure that it's accurate and engaging and it really drives that narrative that you would like to see it impacting the kids in a way that it should?
Okay, so first of all, there's a lot of research sitting here before you. There's a lot of knowledge that I'm sitting on. They say when an old person dies, the library is gone. And I feel like I'm not that old, but this is a library, and there's a lot of information that I can see is needed out there. So a lot of research goes into what are people challenged by right now, what challenges are they facing, what is happening, what is currently a problem. And after doing those kinds of researches, then I sit on to, I want people to understand, but I don't want it to be confusing. Because obviously, when you sit down and you start getting all these big terms, it's like going into a doctor's office, you're like, whoa, what is all of this? So I'm the person who says, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to make you understand, and I'm going to show you how you can help your child so you don't have to go see a specialist, what you can do. So I do a lot of research, and then I sit down and I look at what I have around me and how can this help me help the next person.
A well of knowledge. Now, that is something that, it's quite beautiful to see someone actually claim, because I think at times when somebody is so equipped, it's so informed, it's a matter of, we become so shy to claim that term. And I think I'm going to exploit this and just get the opportunity in understanding what exactly is the concept of sensory play as well as its benefit. Because at times you find that we want to educate a child as though we're speaking in a tertiary level, or we want to just, but then we lack to see that kids learn with color and, play and so forth. If you can just break it down for us exactly what is the concept of sensory play as well as its benefits.
Okay, so I'm just going to take you just before sensory play. So the formative years, your early years, between 0 to 5 years, a child will take in more knowledge at that stage of their life than they ever will even in a university. So I like to look at it as, this is a computer. You've just bought yourself an amazing computer, but it's got no software. And where's the software going to come from? All around. Somebody else is going to put that software into the computer, right? So in my studies, I learned that some people say children are tabula rasas, or blank slates. Now, if it's a blank slate, it falls upon the teacher, the parents, the community to put information into that, right? So now, sensory play. Children between 0 to 3 years are in a sensory motor phase, which means they learn from the environment using their senses. And as simple as what we did in school, your sense of sight, your sense of touch, smell, hearing, taste, that is how your children are comprehending the environment around them. Now, they use their brain to process those senses. So whatever you are exposing them to builds up their knowledge of the world. So we know that children between 0 to 2 eat everything. They'll put everything in their mouth because they're trying to discover the world and they're trying to understand. So what sensory play does is take all those senses, put them together, and build on the child's knowledge. So when you're building your child's tactile sense, you're going to expose them to different touch and feel. You're going to make them play with mud. You're going to make them play with water, and you're going to build their language. You're going to be talking about it. Oh, it's rough. It's soft. How does it feel? It's cold. It's hot. So that's a lot of learning going on. So vocabulary is being built. They're understanding their environment. They're processing their environment. And as they're exposed to it, they grow and they develop. Now, your last question was? Sorry.
My chain of thought. And how does it actually benefit the students in that sense, the concept of sensory learning?
So what happens is later on in life, you go into school. In the early years, in the formative years, it's all play to learn, right? But when they go into school, now their brain must be ready to take in more information. When a child is exposed to sensory play or exposed to messy play and all these things, we sort of preload that software into the brain, right? So when you're playing with water, your child is learning a lot, like they're feeling the weight, they're measuring, it's scientific, it's mathematical. When they get to school, now you're saying to them, now we have one 500 ml of water and another 500 ml. They already can feel that it's heavy, it's 500 mils we're putting together. It's already preloaded in their brain, and then later on you use it. So children who are exposed to these things perform better in school at a later stage, but we start off from the foundation. When you build a house, you have to have your foundation. You have to make sure everything is set correctly, then you start to build. You can't build on sandy land, so to speak.
You know, I'm literally hearing you explain this, and I'm thinking to myself, I learned how to ride a bike as a kid. As much as I haven't ridden a bike in a long time, but I believe the moment I have to mount on a bike, I don't think it would be so much trouble for me to just, paddle my way through it.
Yes.
And I think this speaks to the foundation that has been laid for me. And I think that's something that we tend to neglect from time to time.
And adding on to that, riding a bike is fun and games for children, but what you don't understand is when you're on that bike, you've got your bilateral coordination. So you're moving both sides of your body. You're using both sides of your brain. You've got balance. You're building your gross motor skills and your fine motor skills. So for you, it was a game. But when you're in school and say, for example, you are reading on a page, because you've learned how to balance yourself out and you've learned how to use both sides of your brain, you're going to read a book from left all the way right, read right through, and guess what? You're going to be an intelligent child because you can read. And that's because there was indigenous games. You were outside skipping, you were doing hopscotch, you were riding a bike, you were playing with mud. And so it's all scientific. For those who do go to school and are exposed to a lot of knowledge, they'll understand. But for us who grew up in those homes where you think you're just playing, you're not just playing, you are building. I believe in a holistic approach. You're building the whole child. So it's not just that brain, it's the whole body, and it's all a machine that moves together.
Now, Nolene, another thing that I want us to touch on is we're seeing in the news bulletin that teachers are strained and they're struggling to complete the curriculum, at the same time ensure quality education and so forth, because in the classroom they have to deal with like 50 students at the time. What advice would you give to an educator, be it someone who has been in the industry for a long time or someone who's just starting off, in terms of how do they then suss out the classroom and find ways that really speak to the enhancing education of those learners?
So first of all, being a teacher is a passion. It is a calling, it's a passion. So because of that, you need to be in a position of continuous development. You need to, as an individual, before anybody else steps in, be interested enough to know, how am I going to handle a class of 50 children? Because it's not pap and flace, it is hard work. How do I manage this class? How do I manage different characters and different challenges? So on your own, do the research, do continuous development programs. There's a lot of information online for free. There are institutions that offer free information. And then secondly, I think it's a conversation worth having in terms of policy development. So in terms of our Department of Basic Education, to say, guys, it's all fun and games to say, let's include an autistic child into a class, but you've trained your teacher to teach mainstream, not to teach children with special needs. Now, how do they cope with this child, and how does this child's behavior impact the rest of the class, and vice versa? So that's a conversation that really needs to be had, to say, guys, let's help our teachers. Let's put it out there. Let's say maybe for 5 years, a teacher will teach for 5 years. In the 5th year, they go back into school and they have to do another year of training. And for yourself in the classroom, love what you do. When you love what you do, you will have access to information. And there's nothing wrong with saying, guys, I'm not coping, I need help here, I don't know what I'm doing. Because it's so easy to sit on these key result areas, they call them CRAS, and say, my curriculum says my child should know number 1 to 10, and my child knows 1 to 10, and I'm stopping there. But that child is like being held back from knowing a lot more and progressing more than they can, because we're also sitting back and saying, I've done my job, and that's that. But every child is unique and every child learns differently. And you'll find a 5-year-old that can do their times tables. You'll find a 7-year-old that can read. And now you're saying, but they should only know 20 words. What happens to Jane? She now has to sit in class and be understimulated because the teacher doesn't know what else to do. So I think the biggest thing is love what you do. Everything follows that.
Nolene, have you ever considered being the Minister of Education?
I would love to just not be the minister, but be part of policy and curriculum review and content curating to make sure that what we are teaching the children is right for what they need. Because our education is constantly, it's a dynamic field, it's constantly evolving, and we need to move with the times. What we learned 100 years ago may not be sufficient right now.
Yeah.
So I'd love to
Definitely.
have those conversations.
But Nolene, unfortunately, we are out of time. But I'd just like to throw it to you to say, is there anything you'd like to add to our conversation? Be it a practical tip on how a parent or caregiver can incorporate the idea of creativity as well as fun learning, or anything of your liking to best conclude our conversation.
So what I think is use the world around you to teach your child. Invest in your child's education. Be present as a parent. Be present as a friend, an aunt, a teacher, and look for information that can help this child become an amazing student. And keep watching my TikToks. There's lots of information there.
Please share with us the handle, please, kindly.
So I'm on TikTok as Education with Norleen. I am on Instagram, Education with Norleen. I am on LinkedIn, Education with Norleen. And there I share a lot more in-depth articles on why I do what I do. I do a lot of trainings to help people. So it's caregivers, it's parental support, it's schools. I'm there to help you. I'm your go-to person.
Yeah, Nolene, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This was quite an amazing conversation. What a great way to close off the year with conversation that really gives us hope to say there are people who are looking into bettering the education system, not just out here complaining about it and, pointing out some of the issues, but who are here doing the actual work and using social media, something that I think a lot of us are so attached to. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Viewers at home, this was quite an exciting conversation, and I plead, make sure you do connect with her and any official who's probably watching right now. She's sitting on gold. So make sure you incorporate her in the policy making so the future of ours remains bright. But viewers at home, that's where I close it off with myself as well as Nolene Zulu, who is an early childhood development specialist as well as an advocate for quality education. But not for now, let's head over to an ad break. See you when we come back.